Every once in a while on Twitter, you see something that kind of makes sense, and then you're like, who's tweeting it? This is Twitter. It's supposed to be a dumpster fire. Well, I just saw something from somebody I've followed for quite a long time. In fact, before he had a blue check mark, mind you. And his name is Stephen Miller. He wrote something very, very interesting. At least I thought it was. He said, "The border sucks. Everything about it sucks. On both sides. It's also what happens when you ignore a problem for 20 years. It's used as your political hedge issue on the right and left. And the country says, fuck it. Put that lunatic in charge." So you can clearly see he's not a Trump supporter. Fine by that. But you don't get away with telling us 6 fucking months ago it's a manufactured crisis and then go to full out switch. Sorry, you don't get away with that. Of course, I mixed his words around, but whatever. And I thought to myself, what is he saying here? He thinks that borders are a bad thing, yet he lives in the United States. The United States would not exist without borders. States would not exist without their borders. Thus, the concept of a border is a surrounding area with like-minded people inside. So, if the border sucks, that means you're open for everybody, including the lunatics at the gate that want us dead. Namely, Islam in general. They don't like the West. If you didn't see the banners and the happy flags saying "Death to America," no borders means they come right in and kill everything American. I tend to think having a fence is generally a good idea to keep out crazy people. At least we can identify them before they hop the fence and shoot them if necessary, because they are an enemy of the country. That all being said, what he's saying here is not all bad. I'm actually a globalist in a sense, but I know the reality of why it won't work. One of these days I'll do the video on it, and it should be pretty interesting, maybe, who knows. But he's right about this, because the laws were written in 1976, so it's not 20 years ago, it's 40 years ago. They recently updated it about 20 years ago, and the provisions they did actually made it more costly and more difficult for people to immigrate into the country than ever before. It made it worse, not better. And so all they've done is turn immigration into a cash cow for the government. Quite literally. Go see my video on how immigration works, and you will see that they're making billions off of immigrants moving into this country, working legitimately, and why people like them are pissed off that these other assholes just go to Mexico or go to Canada and just walk across the border. No questions asked, easy to do, risk it in the desert, get it apprehended maybe, and why not? And sometimes they live in the sanctuary cities for 30, 40 years. No one bats an eye, and nobody gives a shit. They work under the table, they do all that fun stuff. But he also made another good point. While I quasi agree with him, and there's no lunatic in charge, by the way, he's actually done better than most, and if he was indeed an actual lunatic, the economy wouldn't be doing as well as it would. We wouldn't have peace talks between North and South Korea, which is fucking amazing to me that he even pulled that off with his big mouth. I watched the tweets that he did, and I actually agreed with everybody. What the fuck are you saying, dude? Do you not know that this guy likes to launch missiles at people? Are you crazy? But I was like, wait a second. He's doing what he would do to a bully. He's standing up to him and saying, come on, bring it on. I'll nuke your ass. And I thought to myself, that's exactly what I would do to a bully too if they were trying to threaten me and my people. I'd retaliate in force. Because self-defense is the only justification for violence, in my opinion. But I thought about it. Well, when did they say this? So I thought I'd use the same source twice to see how it goes. Just so happens, on the New Yorker, is the first one I found, Donald Trump, the migrant caravan, and a manufactured crisis at the U.S. border. Someone here has been talking about the weeks after the election, the midterms, and all that fun stuff. Donald Trump has spoken less frequently about the migrant caravan, but the subject is still plainly on his mind. Well, it has been. He's been working for the southern border. He's been doing, this is one of those campaign promises. One of the last ones he has not delivered on. He's delivered on pretty much everything else but this. So why would it not be on his mind? So go read this article. I'll link it in my description below. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but basically this article is claiming that the manufactured crisis is all Trump's doing. Trump made this manufactured crisis. It really isn't a crisis. It's not as bad as people are saying, right? Spin the clock forward, because this was written in November of 2018, so 7 months ago, so he's close, you know. And all of a sudden, AOC, let me scroll up to the top so you can see the title, The Unimaginable Reality of American Concentration Camps. Somebody is actually arguing the position that because it was in the history, and we have this two-dimensional thinking about history, that we can't compare current situations to historical situations because we can't envision our own selves doing that to other people. And it's written down here in the conclusion. Let me jump down to the bottom here. Basically, they say, it's a choice between thinking whatever is happening in reality is by definition acceptable and thinking that some actual events on our current reality are fundamentally incompatible with our concept of ourselves, not just as American human beings, and therefore it is unimaginable. Meaning that it is indeed a concentration camp at the border here. It's not manufactured, it's not evil, and because it's not as bad as throwing people into forced labor camps, tortured to death, and experimented on with gas chambers, or even the Gulag, if you want to compare it to not concentration camps, but the Gulag, which is almost a concentration camps where people get a tenner, as it was called in the Gulag archipelago. They'd be thrown in these places and tortured for 10 years. And if you were lucky, you survived the first tenner, because they would do it more than once. 20 years in jail for speaking against the government. There's multiple differences between this situation that we have at the border and concentration camps. And I'll give you a few of these at the end of this as some icing on the cake. But the latter position is immeasurably more difficult to hold, not so much because it's contentious and politically risky, as attacks on Ocasio-Cortez continually demonstrate, because it's a cognitively strenuous. It makes one's brain implode and will always be a minority position. No, she's lying. She's absolutely lying. That's the difference. This person clearly is turned it and tried to justify the utilization of the phrase concentration camps. Now, this is not to say that the situation they're in is good. When you what happens? Let me give you an example. What happens when a hospital is flooded with more people than it can handle? Just a regular hospital, like, down the street. Suddenly a major earthquake or catastrophe happens. A lot of people get injured, let's say. A lot of people. How many are going to die? Why are they going to die? It's because that one hospital that could service that area can't service that many. They become overtaxed. They become overrun. They run out of supplies. People start dying because they can't treat everyone. We see it in the movies all the time with those big, catastrophe level things that happen to everybody, and the hospitals go fucking crazy because they can't help everyone. So you see injured people in the hallways and stuff like that, and the nurses are running around and the doctors are running around like chickens with their heads cut off. It's because they can't service everyone, right? Well, that is similar to what's happening at the border. These people broke our law. Yes, those facilities down there are at capacity, if not beyond. Why? Because socialist countries in South America and Central America have collapsed to the point where everybody's like, fuck it, we're out. Let's go to America where life is better. They didn't even want to stop in Mexico, where they could at least speak the same language. They're like, no, we're going straight to America. Fuck Mexico. Mexico is just as bad. I mean, they're not socialist and all that, but whatever. Let's go straight to America where life is better. And besides, the politicians said open borders. The country's for everyone. We have sanctuary cities. Life will be grand. Free welfare, free checks, free money. Free housing, free education, all that, free, and they have the money to boot. So where the fuck do you think they're gonna go? I mean, seriously. Here's my issue. Oh, okay, so I laid that out. Here's my issue with comparing the southern border with concentration camps straight out of her stupid ass mouth. There's my two comparisons, right? So consider this. Concentration camps, what are they? Collective group of people in a similar location, and they're usually there for a reason. You put people in a concentration camps for a reason. Usually, in every instance that's ever been done, it's political dissidents and or criminals according to the current government's authority, I guess, laws, whatever. Well, that's partially right. So we have people that decided to cross our border illegally. That's an illegal act. That's criminal. We throw them in jail temporarily, 60 days. That's as long as they get to stay there. And then we kick them out. They go back to the country. Some of these are getting refused asylum. Yes, some of these people are allowed in asylum, and I don't blame them, especially if it's from like Venezuela or some crazy shit like that where the place is at war. Yeah, that's a legitimate cause for asylum. However, here's the difference. We try to care for every single person that comes in there. They are at capacity. Congress refuses to fund the damn thing, and people are dying because of it. So what do? Point the finger. Instead of fixing the problem, they point the finger. We just saw in the news today as well that there was a company that was providing furniture to these facilities, beds for children. What did the employees do? Walk out because they're helping Trump. How tribalist fucking retarded do you have to be? Fuck Trump. This is kids that you've just decided to say, you don't get a bed. Fuck you. What? How stupid can you be? I mean, seriously. They decided to give beds to these kids, and you're like, nah, fuck you. You are helping Trump. You are part of the problem. Aliens are not criminals. Yeah, they are. That's the whole definition of an illegal alien, is that they've come here breaking our laws and not going through proper immigration. That's the problem. So, as I've said in many videos before, what's the real problem? Congress won't do their goddamn job. They don't want to touch it. Why? Because it makes billions of dollars for the government. They make billions off of the legal immigrants here. They make even more off of citizenry. So what's 10% of illegals sneaking into our country, just working under the table, subterfuging pretty much all of our economy? That's nothing, right? We'll just increase minimum wage or some shit like that. Why not? Give them more money so that it'll force corporations to hike up the prices for everything else, making the cost of living more. You know, socialism works every time. Oh, that's all I had to say about this one in particular. I thought the interesting take on this, it was a really interesting tweet. You don't get to go, news media, you don't get to go from manufacturer crisis, this is all Trump's fault. It's in his head. It's not really as big of a problem as they're saying. It's not as bad to they're fucking gassing people at the fucking border and everybody's dying. They're torturing children. They're separating children from their families. Bleeding heart. Poor pity you. Trump's fault. In actuality, the ones that are saying that shit, it's their fault. Congress needs to change the laws. It's their fucking job to do so, and they're not doing it. Get off your ass and do your fucking job. See you next time.
How dare you insult me like this? Insolent fool!